Hello, and welcome to today's Trainer Education webinar, Using Personality Style Assessments in Training, hosted by HRDQ and presented by Dr. Annette Cremo. Today's webinar will last approximately an hour. Do stay tuned at the conclusion of the broadcast for an exclusive offer. Before we begin, note that there is a question and answer button located in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. You can use this button during the webinar to submit any questions you have. We'll either answer those questions as we receive them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation or by email after the session. My name is Sarah Montgomery, and I will moderate today's webinar. I am in business development for HRDQ, a publisher of research-based training solutions that improve the performance of individuals, teams, and organizations. Today's presenter is Dr. Annette Cremo, a seasoned training professional with over 15 years of experience in education, organization development, and human resources. She holds an MED in Training and Development from Penn State University. Annette received her PhD in Psychoeducational Process from Temple University, and her doctoral research examined the active learning process for work teams and suggested ways to optimize content retention. Annette's clients include Ernst & Young, GlaxoSmithKline, Tyco, Hershey Foods, Hilton Hotels, Ingersoll Rand, PPL, Washington, D.C. Department of Corrections, Big Lots, and Sara Lee, just to name a few. She recently completed Supervisory, Leadership, and Diversity Instructional Design and Training for the PA Workforce Investment Board. Annette is also an adjunct university instructor, leading courses in training and presentation skills at Pennsylvania State University and the University of Scranton. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today, Annette.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all for joining us today for this program in personality style assessments and when to use them and just what the one that we're going to discuss today is all about and the benefits of it and how you can use it. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'll talk about specifically what we're going to be going over today in the agenda. We're going to look at what personality styles are, what they're not. Why do we even need one? I was just debating with one of my colleagues the other day, do we really need this tool when we're training? Do we need this tool when we're coaching? Or is it something that we can get the information, can we get that information just through a spirited discussion? And I have my thoughts about that, and hopefully by the end of today's discussion, you're going to have some thoughts about that as well, if you don't already. We're going to look at the dimensions of Jungian theory and the strengths and weaknesses of each one of the dimensions, the clashes of the preferences, and I think this is where many of us do get in trouble with each other, is that I think sometimes people say, you know, they're crazy because they're not like us. Well, you know what? They're not. They're just different. And I think we have to appreciate those differences to really get along with each other on an individual basis, but also as a team. We're going to look at how we can apply our awareness of styles, and then we'll go into a brief question and answer period at the close of today's session. Okay, Sarah, if you want to take it to the next slide, please. Our first polling question today is, are you a trainer or an OD designer, HR specialist, manager, sales rep, or other? You take a couple minutes and just press your button and we'll get some results for you. See who we have attending today. See a lot of interesting names and titles behind their names. I want to welcome all of you to our session. Okay, it looks like we have a lot of the votes that are in. And here we go. Trainers. 52% of you are trainers, managers 14%. Glad to see you're here there. HR specialists, other, and I would imagine some of the other that I see based on your names could be perhaps counselors or maybe owners of businesses. So welcome. All right, you want to take it to the next slide, please? And we all use these different, we all use these kind of assessments or can use these in the course of our business no matter who we are in the organization. All right, now, next question I have for you is how familiar are you with a personality style assessment? I would imagine looking at my list that there are some certified experts out there. Have you trained using some of these? Have you only taken one as a participant? Or, you know what, I don't hardly have any experience with this. Take a minute and vote for that, if you would. Glad to see all those certified experts out there. Excellent. Good. All right, I think we're about slowed down now. All right, 19% of our entire group certified. Yes, good. Training, they have used some of these, and there's many, many that are out there right now. So you have your pick of what you can use, why you use them, and only taking one as a participant. So this should be kind of fun and interesting for you. Good, thank you. So you all have some experience with these assessments. All right. First, I want to talk about what are they? Personality. What do they assess, these personality assessments? They assess our preferences. In my opinion, we are, with a personality assessment, something that we're hardwired for from the time we're young. And we grow as we grow. They basically stay the same from what I've seen. There's only, I think, one of the dimensions that we're going to be talking about, and that's the thinking and the feeling, that may change when you're in your 40s. But for the most part, they stay the same. And it's because it's not an either-or type thing. They do measure your preferences, and it looks at the strengths of preferences as opposed to you're either A or B. You're either, and we're going to talk about an extrovert or an introvert. Right? And they do, and we have weaknesses here, but I like to think of things, maybe lesser strengths that we have. Or, in my opinion, too, they are flags that we have to watch in ourselves, that, if we let our dominant dimension take over, sometimes they could become a weakness for us. So they're a way to tell us who we are and what we have to be aware of within ourselves and within others. All right, you go to the next slide, please. But they're not. They do not assess your traits, ability, character, competence. They don't assess your intelligence. They don't assess if you're going to be a success or not in life. And they're not intended to label. Many times people say, well, this is putting a label on somebody. In my opinion, they're not. They're giving me an insight into people's personalities and why they do things the way they do. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. And from our earlier poll, I see that a lot of you have used them, and I would imagine there's a lot of different ways that you have used them, maybe besides some of these. But the ones, I think the major ones that I've seen, I've used them for, and my clients have used them for, is that it helps us learn about ourselves, it helps us learn better about what our preferences are, why we do things the way they do, and about our behavior. In addition to learning about us, we also learn about other people. Same thing with them. We learn about their preferences, why they do things the way they do, their behavior. It helps us sometimes predict how a person's going to respond to things. So it gives us more of an in-depth knowledge, and I see this especially beneficial when it comes to working in teams or even working with your partner or your friend. It helps us raise self-esteem, and in this I mean that sometimes you're thinking, like, why do I do things the way I do? Oh, we always beat ourselves up. And it tells us we are not wrong, that it's okay to be the way we are, and we do have wonderful signature strengths. And sometimes these assessments help us identify what our signature strengths are. Enables constructive use of individual differences when we're working in teams, because I may be good at one thing and a person may be good at another. For example, I am not good at gathering the details. I sort of jump to conclusions. I jump from A to Z and I leave out all the other part. And I need somebody on my team or working with me that can collect those details, that has that strength. And they bring a wonderful resource to me. It improves communication, because now I know how to speak to you. I know how to speak your language, and you'll become aware of how to speak mine. It leads to effective conflict management, collaboration, team development, problem solving, critical thinking by knowing ourselves more. And it also helps us with our professional development. Because if I know where I'm going, I can plan how to become a stronger person. Sarah, if you want to go to the next slide, please. The one we're going to talk about, the personal style inventory, is the basis of that was Jung's work, And, I think we'd also be remiss if we didn't also talk about Isabel Myers and Catherine Briggs, because as you see when we go through this, they add that last dimension on, the judging and the perceiving dimension. But it's based on Carl Jung's work, and of course we know Carl Jung was worked with Freud in this, but sort of went off on his own. But it's based on your core, I'm going to say hardwired personality. And we'll see how this model unfolds as we go through some of our next slides. All right, you want to change it, Sarah, please? In the model, we're looking at 4 pairs of traits. And these traits are the extrovert and the introvert, sensing and intuition, feeling and thinking, and perceiving and judging. And when I look at these, I look at them, in addition to how you orient yourself to the world, your extrovert or introvert, I like to look at it as, where do I get my energy from? Do I get my energy from the world of sights and sounds and people and interaction out there? Or do I get my energy from really being by myself and thinking, and this is where I juice my batteries? The next one we have here is how do we perceive the world? And if you look at some of the work out there, I think we, as humans, we live to solve problems. Everything that we do is making a decision or solving a problem. Well, the way we solve these problems or make decisions is through gathering information. And this is just part of the model here, how we perceive the world, how we get our information. Do we get our information through our senses, and that's the sensing, sight, sound, touch? Do I need to count it? Do I need to just make sure I have all that information there? Or do I have that gut feeling? Am I a person that when I meet somebody, I know if I like you or not? Or when I see a car out there, I know what car I want. It's just that gut feeling. And by the way, it's not that simple, but I just want to put it in some terms that you can relate to. Next one is how you make decisions. So now that we know how we interact with the world and get, juice our batteries and how we get all that information, when we make decisions, do we make it with our heart or with our head, our feeling or our thinking? And the last one, the attitude towards life, perceiving or judging. To me, this is how do I order my world? Do I need an environment that is very organized and detailed and planful and check it off my plan? Or am I one that is a little bit more flexible and flowing? All right. Then we're going to look at each one of these. And I'm anxious to see, from we're going to do some polls with you to see what this group looks like. So first we're going to look at how do we orient ourselves to the world, or where do we get our energy, where do we juice our batteries from? So you go to the next slide, Sarah. I think that's where we have our poll here. Our poll is how you describe yourself. Group A, outgoing, social, cordial, enthusiastic, a good people person. Or are you Group B, thoughtful, careful, quiet, self-controlled? So if you take a minute and vote on that, we'll see where you all come from. All right, we have about 90% voted, so we're going to close the poll there. Look at, almost split down the middle. Yeah, 56% of you are the extroverts, and 44% of you consider yourself to be an introvert. And neither one is bad. They're both great. All right, let's go and look at what they need. All right. Our general orientation. If you are towards extroversion, you like the outer world. You like to relate to people. You like to talk to people. You share your thoughts, your feelings, your ideas. Always, you're sort of viewed as that social butterfly. Try to conform to other folks' expectations so you know what they want and sort of go along with them. Shifts in values and behaviors easily to go along with the crowd. Let's think of this person as very fluid. Introversion, you like your personal world. You relate to others with caution. Share your thoughts and feelings only with trusted others. Set its own direction from your inner compass. So you see where everything is more internal, and you're energized by all of this. Now, can you be the other type? Absolutely. If you take a minute right now, and I'd like you to sign your name on a piece of paper that's right by you. Sign your name, pick up a pen, sign your name. First name is fine. And imagine for most of you that was easy to do because you didn't even have to think about it. Now what I would like you to do is put that pen in the other hand and sign your name. It's probably a little bit more difficult, but I'll tell you, if I gave you $1 million check and asked you to sign your name, you'd be able to do it. But it takes a little bit more energy, but we can still do it. And that's what this is all about when I said that they are preferences. If you have a preference for extroversion, yeah, you could be an introvert, but it takes a little bit more energy. If you're an introvert, if you like that inner world, if you like being by yourself, if that's what juices your batteries, you know what? You can get up in front of a crowd and you can network. You'd be great at it too, but it takes a little bit more energy. And when I think of the extroversion and introversion too, introverts, in my opinion, like to think things through before they say it. They like to be given that time. Extroverts, you'll find they just blurt things out, and all of a sudden something will come out of their mouth, and they're like, darn it, why did I say that? And sometimes they get in trouble with each other because we look at each other through our own set of lenses. So if I'm an extrovert, I am looking at the world through my extroverted lenses, and when I see somebody that's not like me, I think, you know what, what's wrong with them? They're not like me, but you know, they're just different. Sarah, if you go to the next slide, please. All right. The strengths of the extrovert, they like the external world, they like interaction. So if you need somebody in your team or your group that you need to have this done, go with the extrovert. They go along with group decisions. And the weaknesses are where they get in trouble is they don't like independent decisions. They like to talk to people. They like to interact with people, so they don't like to get tasks done alone. So you'll find them like sneaking out of their office or sneaking with people so they can talk to them. Maintaining attention to tedious solitary activities difficult because they like that interaction. These are the folks that, you may see multitasking. They could be doing one thing and listening to the radio or watching something because they like all that stimulus. And the last one is having meetings or with memos or emails. Memos and emails are hard for them. They like the meetings because they like the interaction. All right, if you go to the next slide, Sarah, on the introverts, some of their strengths are they like to work alone. Independent in thought, they're not impulsive, they can concentrate, they work on ideas, they have a clear direction. But again, you go on the other side, and they need to be more aware of the world around them. They sometimes miss opportunities because of this. They may not give you critical input that you need if you're on a team because they like to think things through. So I think an implication here is that if you have a team meeting and you know you have an introvert on that team and you need information from them, let them know a day ahead of time what they're going to be expected to say, and they will be more than happy to share that information with you. Or you may even ask them to write it down. See, because you need to get their ideas. And the last one is not establishing context for ideas so others can relate and accept things more easily. All right, go to the next slide, please. Now, in conflict, this is where, I said before, sometimes we get in trouble because we look at each other through our own set of lenses. And when I do my training with this type of assessment, what I will do is split the room between the extroverts and the introverts, and I ask them the question, how do they see each other? And you'll probably hear more words in this. I think these are some of the kinder words that I see when extroverts see introverts as they're standoffish, they're moody, they don't like us. I hear they're unpredictable. Other things that I hear are they're not team players, they don't want to get involved, they're snobbish, only because they like their internal world and they don't want to extrovert themselves, they don't want to get out. So we have these are misperceptions about our introvert friends. Now how about the other one? How do introverts see the extroverts? Wow, look at this, loud, unprepared, pretentious, boisterous, talkative, pain in the butt, I've heard. They won't leave me alone. They only listen to themselves. They like to hear themselves talk. But I also sometimes hear a lot of introverts say, you know what, I'd like to be an extrovert for a little bit because they seem to have more fun. It's all a matter of perception. So this is kind of interesting to get them if you're ever doing this kind of an activity with the assessment to divide them into groups. So you start that rich dialogue between each other. Because sometimes I think people are surprised that others see them in this way. All right, let's go on to the next dimension then. And that is how you perceive your world, or as I said, how do we gather information? This takes us to our fourth polling question. How do you describe yourself? Are you exact, realistic, sensible? That's group A. Conservative, or you B? Original, creative, visionary, insightful. Take a minute and vote for what you are. We have 65% of the vote-in, 70. Let's take a little bit more. All right, thank you. Well, we have Group B, original, creative, visionary, and insightful. So far, our group is predominantly an E and a. The Group B is going to be, we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so you want to go to the next slide, please? All right, so we have an E and an N so far. All right, in the when you do the assessment that we're talking about right now, you will come up with a letter of either an S or an N. The first one's an E or an I, and instead of an I for intuiting, it's going to be an N. So we have two different preferences here. One is the sense, or the ones that like facts, the details, data. They remember facts. They love their facts. They're impatient with theories or guesses or gut feelings. They're good at monitoring progress because they're very exacting in getting that information. Intuitors, concepts, ideas, theories, impressions. They get impatient with the details, and a lot of my intuitors will keep one of their favorite sayings is bottom line, hurry up and get the bottom line. They're good at innovation, but not the planning part of it. I think the planning is going to go over to sensing, but the innovation is where my intuitors are. All right, let's go to the next slide and look at each one of them in depth a little bit more. All right. Our sensors, they like their details. Remember I said, I think on the earlier slides, the who, what, when, where, why, how. If I can't taste it, if I can't see it, you know what? It doesn't exist. Practicality, ability to work with tedious details. They have a lot of patience. But this leads to some of the things they have to watch out for is because they're so sometimes in the muck and mire of the details, they don't see the possibilities. They lose sight of the big picture. They use only the things that are concrete to them. They get frustrated with the complicated or the bigger picture. So if I were to have them look at a mosaic in a wall, as a window, they would tell me all the different colors and sizes and shapes in there, as opposed to my intuitor that will tell me what the big picture looks like. So they're going to count everything, and they'll look at all the really minute details of things. And they sometimes have slowness in completing tasks because they like all of those details. All right, let's go now to the intuitors. Intuitors, possibilities. They like the new ideas, problem solvers. They like the complicated. They can take a big problem and probably come to an answer on it because they can like weed through all of the details and see how they can get it done. But they do have inattention to details. I, myself, am an intuitor. And no matter how hard I try, when I have to look at my writing and do some, editing of it, it's very hard for me because I look at the big picture, and it's hard for me to find them. I lose sight of they may lose sight of the here and now. The tedious gets them bored, and they go on to new things. There's a lack of patience, and these leaps of logic or these intuitive leaps that they have sometimes gets them in trouble. When I do my training sessions with this, sometimes I talk about, all about how people organize things and how they, just gather this information. And when you're buying a car, my sensors will know what type of car, how many miles per gallon, how much it's going to cost me for insurance, how much the car payments are going to be. And my intuitive will say, like, I just like it. This is what I want. And honest to goodness, when I was doing another training session, we were talking about picking partners in our life. And some of my sensors will say, yeah, they have a checklist of what they want. And they'll go through that checklist. They don't meet the criteria, they're off the list. Intuitors sometimes will see a person that's like, that's the one. It's that gut feeling. All right, let's go on to the next slide to look at what happens, I think, in conflict with these two folks. The sensors, the intuitors, as forgetful, idealistic, impractical. They don't make good judgments because they're like, it's always their gut feeling, right? And then the intuitors, go to the next one, see the sensors as imaginative, conventional, common, maybe analysis paralysis because they like the details so much. Does it get them in trouble? Absolutely. These are causes of conflict in our lives, with our families, and in our workplaces. And I said we were talking before about how these things are sort of hardwired. And I've noticed from my family, and I have 8 children, and when they were young, I remember they exhibited these traits when they were young growing up. Some of them were, and then they still are basically the same way. The extrovert, the one that likes to be held by everybody and be noticed, and the one that would just like to sit in his crib and just like be by himself and be energized like that. And I see this as they grow up. So it's kind of interesting that when you see these patterns and they stay the same as people mature in their lives. All right, if you go to the next slide now, talk about the next dimension. So now that we know where we get our energy, how we gather our data, next thing is how do you make decisions? Do you make it with your heart or with your head? Let's see what this group is. Would you describe yourself as systematic, logical, objective, reasonable? Was it calculating? Is that one? Yeah, or humanistic, empathetic, compassionate, warm. That's what our group is. So far, again, we're an EN group. Wow, interesting. We have 69, 70% voted almost. All right, you want to close at 80%? We have, looks like right now, though we can't say 100% here, we have people who are humanistic, empathetic, compassionate, warm, kind, from the heart. So we have a lot of feelers in here so far, E, N, and an F. You want to go to the next slide? We'll talk about that a little bit. All right. We're going to look at the different dimensions and what they are. Two different ones, the thinking and the feeling. You're going to use either the T or the F. Thinking are rational, uses rational thought. Logical. I think of Spock when I think of somebody who would be a thinker. They like rules, procedures, systems. They like to, they seem as though they are very laser focused, and I've even heard the word cold when they are talking to someone, but it's because they are thinking things through. Feelers, on the other hand, look at they're, I think, guided by their values. They believe that feelings are superior to logic. Feels confined by rules, procedures, and systems. They're impatient with the analytical types. They make their decisions, bottom line, from the heart. It's either the head or the heart. Go to the next slide. Look at each one of these a little bit more. Thinking, logical analysis of things, very objective, organization, critical thinking. They stand firm on things because they've made that decision. And the weakness, again, or things they have to watch out for, is that they are perceived as not noticing people's feelings. As a, I will tell you, I'm a thinker. I am sometimes, I think, accused of not noticing people's feelings and being too cold and logical with some of my decisions that I make. People may think that I don't understand the value or the importance of things, but there is that consideration by the thinker, so that's not 100% true. Not expressing your feelings doesn't come out, and a lack of interest in persuading or motivating others. Right. Let's go to the feeler now. They do consider other people's feelings in making that decision. If I did X, what would happen to the person? What would happen to the team? What would happen to the family? They understand other people's needs, and they value the feelings of others. They like to bring other people in the group. Great team players. Great team players. You know, great supervisors and managers too, because they have that caring about the other person. They are viewed as a great manager supervisor because people know they care. They have an ability to persuade and arouse others' enthusiasm because of their caring heart. Their weakness, they may not be logical or objective. They are organized around values and what has meaning. Being uncritical and overly accepting. And sometimes my feelers will say, sometimes I feel like a doormat because, I can't say no because I'm always taking into, other people's consideration for things. And I'll do it even though I may not want to do it, but if it brings harmony, I'll do it. And I think another thing that I've heard from my feelers are they have this really acute sense of conflict when they come into any kind of a situation. So if they come into a room and conflict's going on, they have like a gut feeling. And I know one of the women told me, it feels like there's a black cloud over me when there's conflict around. They can just, they can feel it inside. And sometimes I think my thinkers miss this. In relationships, My feelers are the ones that are always, I love you, you're great, thank you for this. And the thinkers are, honey, I told you I loved you when I married you. If I ever change my mind, I'll let you know. And that sort of sums up the difference between the thinking and the feeling. Let's go on to the next one and see, where do we get in trouble when we have this conflict between thinking and feeling? Well, thinkers see feelers as irrational, gushy, senseless. And, I think another thing to point out right here is that if you look statistically in society, women are predominantly your feelers. And if they take the assessment, you're going to have predominantly women as the feelers. Now, men are feelers too, but when you have a man who exhibits that preference, what do you think people think about it? Totally erroneous, but they think, irrational and gushy times 10%, because they're not, according to norms, supposed to be like that. All right, then let's see how the feelers, what they feel about thinkers, that they are unfeeling, stoic, impersonal, cold, calculated, laser-like focused, all those different things. And you all could probably add some more when you know of people or think about people that you know who are different than you. And I think the stronger, because the instruments measure the strength of it, and the stronger tendency you have towards any one of these preferences, the more you're going to exhibit the things that we're talking about. The lesser strength you have in that one, you're going to be able to, go back between both sides of them. So if you're not a strong feeler, you're going to have some thinking in there too. So you won't exhibit all of these traits that we're talking about. All right, let's go to the next slide. Your attitude towards life. How do you organize your world? Let's look at it and take our last poll for today. How would you describe yourself? Firm, decisive, self-assured, planful, planning your work every day, making a to-do list, checking those things off, pretty flexible, adaptive, open-minded, tolerant. It's a fun one to do. And this is the one, by the way, that Myers and Briggs added when they did the assessment, when they created the assessment there. Look at this, 74% voted, 81%. All right, do you want to close it, Sarah? Predominantly, they have a group that is flexible, adaptive, open-minded, tolerant. Isn't that something that we need to be in today's society? And sometimes the more, these folks I think are a little bit more open to change. They change a little bit easier because of their flexibility. Sometimes I see the group above, the firm, decisive, self-assured, and planful ones are the ones that have the most difficulty with change. That's how I bring this whole aspect up when I do some change management sessions. All right, let's go on to the next slide to take a more in-depth look at all of these, as both of these dimensions. And this is, again, how our attitude towards life, or how we organize our lives. Judgers, they are judging. They prefer deciding to perceiving. They want to know when it's going to be done. They love their to-do lists. They probably walk around with pads of paper and they make to-do lists. And they probably, when they're going to the store, they have lists of things that they need. And it may be because they like order so much in their world. It may even be in the order that the store is laid out in, and they like to check their things off when they get it done. They make quick decisions. They quickly move from decision to action. They preferred planned and an orderly environment. I had a friend who was taking her children on a wonderful vacation to Disney. Well, she was such a high in the judging that what she did was she went to AAA and had the triptych done, and went as far as knowing exactly when she was going to stop for the bathroom breaks, how long it was going to be. Everything was calculated out. When she got to Disney, she knew that she wanted her children to have their picture taken with all of the Disney characters, and knew when all these characters were going to be at what place, and had her kids there to get those pictures taken. Did she do it? You bet she did. Perceiving. They collect data. They prefer collecting data to make decisions. These are the folks that I see, they don't like closure. Judges like the closure. Perceivers like to always, they're never finished. It's always a work in progress. So these are the folks that may come in, if your deadline is 5 o'clock today, they're going to come in at 4:59 to bring you that information, because they're always collecting data. If they're going to write a report in school, They're going to be the ones that are going to, cram the last minute because they're always trying to change something. I think my tendency is both it depends on if I'm looking in business or in personal life, so I'm sort of like right in the middle. But when I was doing my dissertation, I always wanted to have more information, and I never had that closure. All right, I want to consider all sides of an issue. I delay in making decisions, prefer things to let it happen, and I'm flexible and adaptable if I'm perceiving. Right, sort of like a balloon floating in the sky. And again, great with change. All right, let's go on to the next slide and see where we have the strengths. The strengths of a judge are they are very planful. They can make the decisions. They will be willing to evaluate, right, and know if criteria has been met. But they get in trouble because they seem as though they're unyielding and stubborn. They don't have adaptability. They are sometimes too planful and too organized. And you can see this in every aspect of their lives. And again, it goes, depending on how strong you are in each one of these areas, will depend on how much of some of these things you do. In doing these sessions, just say, some of you, if you look in your wallet right now, you have your dollar bills organized. Some of you do still carry paper money. You have your dollar bill organized. Some of you don't. Some of you have it just like folded and thrown in. Some of you don't even throw it in your wallet. You just throw it in your pocket or in your purse or in your briefcase. And those of you who have your money organized, it may be all facing the same way. And I've even had clients in the last few years that have it organized according to the numbers on the bills. So everything is in order in some way or another. In your home, going into your closets, you're going to have, in judging, if you score high in this, you may have your closets organized with the shirts, the pants, the jackets, but not just that, all in color order. Or in addition to color order, it could be long sleeves and short sleeves. I had one woman last year that had everything organized like that, and she also, when she got a pair of shoes, she would take a picture of the pair of shoes, she would put the picture on the box, and every time she took the shoes off, she'd put the shoes back in the box with the right picture on, again, liking that order. In folding towels, things have to be folded the same way. All the towels fold the same way. All the washcloths together, the face cloth, and the bath towels, all the same way. And if it's not, what do you think they do? Unfold it and fold it again. All right, let's go on to the next one, looking at the perceiving. They see all sides of an issue, flexible, adaptable, compromising on tasks, but they may appear to be indecisive because they never are finished getting that information. They don't have plans. They will fly by the seat of their pants. They will not plan for the weekend. They will just go out and say, oh, let's just do this for a weekend. Let's just go somewhere. And that sometimes is difficult on the other person if they are not like you. Inability to make a quick, firm decision, so sometimes by the process of elimination that they'll make their decision, and rushing to complete tasks because of a deadline. And sometimes I see these folks as being energized by that deadline, and that's why they get it done. All right, let's go on to the next slide and see where they get in trouble with each other. In conflict, what happens? Judges see perceivers as indecisive, weak, hesitant, not able to make up their mind. What else have I heard? Probably always late with things. They're never on time. And let's see how perceivers see the judges. All right, they see them as stubborn, short-sighted, presumptuous, just too structured. Like loosen up a little bit. And each one of these things sort of come together and make us unique. So let's go to the next slide and see, putting it all together here. Again, just to review the 4 pairs that we had, the extroversion or the introversion, either an E or an I. You are either a sensor or an intuitor, an S or an N, a thinker or a feeler, a T or an F, or feeler is an F or a T, and lastly, you're a P or a J, perceiving or judging. Our group, our statistics are the E, N, F, and P. I think the next slide shows us a whole composite of all of them, if I'm correct. Can I take us to the next slide? Yes. So you'll see them. There are 16 different areas when you put all these things together. And you can sort of look to see where you are. And if you look at this, when you do some of these assessments with your group, you may have many people who are, see our group is in the ENFP, and that's the bottom right-hand quadrant there. And we may have a large group here, and then we may have some people who are in the upper left-hand quadrant. Well, according to the research, it says that, you know what, people who are diagonally opposite probably have the most difficult time in understanding each other because we are so opposite. So that's a great way to use some of these things to see where you lie. It sort of gives you a big picture of maybe it could be a relationship where two people are, or it could be a group, it could be a team, whatever that is. So you'll see this is one way to look at all the different types together. All right, you want to take it to the next slide, Sarah, please. Team building application. I love this. When you're looking at teams, and Lencioni talks about this, probably one of the first pages of his book. Teams succeed because they're exceedingly human. By acknowledging the imperfections of their humanity, members of functional teams overcome their natural tendencies that make teamwork so elusive. And on his, when you look at how he describes a functional team or a dysfunctional team, I think the bottom line is about, you know, building that trust. And the way Lencioni talks about it is, if you're going to build a team, you need to know who's on your team. And he does suggest using an instrument. I think he even refers to the Myers-Briggs in his book, using an instrument that is designed to find out who you are. And again, there are many that are out there. When we just talked about is personal styles inventory. So it's a little bit, it's the same, you're looking at the same dimensions, but in a different way. One thing about the inventory that I just spoke about, you do not need to be certified to do that one, as many others are required you to do, not need certification. All right, why don't we go to the next one, please? Next slide. All right, coaching applications. These are some, I know we had questions about what are some ways that we could use this. One is we can use it with individuals. Individuals in coaching to see what their strengths are, where their lesser strengths are, where they need, what are some of the areas that they have to watch out for, the flags that go up sometimes, and how do I make myself stronger. And one thing with coaching, too, is that we want to build on people's strengths, not try to make them different than who they are, but if they have a certain strength in an area, to use that strength and build it up, because that's truly when we succeed. The next way we can use this in could be in teams, to see who's on our team. What kind of team do we have? Is it a very homogeneous team, or do we have a heterogeneous team? Homogeneous teams probably are a little bit more difficult to work with because they may get along well, but they don't bring in the wonderful strengths that everybody else has. So you want to make sure, if you know that your team members are like that, to bring in as many different types as you can, or try to look at people who can use that different dimension to make the team as robust as it can be. And the last one, sometimes when I do some coaching with couples, to see what differences they are. And it's these little differences that I talk about, that we just talked about, that sometimes get people in trouble. And that goes back to one of the first questions that I asked you when I was, or that I mentioned. We're talking, you know, do we need this tool? Or why can't we just discuss it? Do we need it in teams? Do we need to take these sort of assessments? Or can't we just discuss it to say, well, this is how I am and this is how you are, or even as couples, to say, you know, have that good discussion to bring some of these differences up. And for me, it's a way, it's a very, I guess, a logical way to look at an assessment that has been validated, to bring up what these differences are. And sometimes it gets a couple, it gets a team, it gets individuals unstuck from the place they are in their lives and helps them move on to greater growth, no matter what area they're looking at. All right, next slide, please. All right, leadership development applications. You use this when you're trying to, I know when I'm doing individual development plans for my leaders, for my managers, to help them grow, to know what the organization needs, and to help them grow in that part. It helps them with their motivation, and really in assessing and planning for their future in getting where they want to be in life. All right, Sarah's going to go to the next slide, please. And this may be where you're going to ask for some questions. In summary, all right? It's easy to get good players. Getting them to play together, that's the hard part. Love that quote. And this is, I think, when you use this sort of an assessment, no matter what assessment you use, this is how we get our teams to play. This is how we get people to play together. All right. If you take a couple minutes now, if you do have any questions, just submit your questions. And then, Sarah, if we can, maybe you could bring those questions up and we can talk about them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Annette. Feel free to submit any questions that you have. We have a few that have actually already come in throughout your presentation, so I'm going to go ahead and start with those.
Oh, excellent.
The first one is from Margaret, and she asks, is there any bad style?
Margaret, no, not at all. Every style has its own strengths, and I think we have to find out what they are to know how we can use those strengths, but there is no bad. And sometimes people, I think that's a misperception of some of my clients, I think, where they're going to say, well, they're going to say this one's bad, this one's not good. And even when people are taking the assessment, that's one question I get all the time. It's like, what if I turned out to be bad? There is nothing bad. It's just this is who you are, and who you are is perfect.
Great. And from Barbara, we have, how does this compare to the MBTI?
Okay, the MBTI and this one measure on the same dimensions, the E and the I, the S and the N, the T and the F, and the P and the J. Myers-Briggs, MBTI, you need professional certification for. So you can go to Center for Psychological Type, I think, and maybe get some information there to get your certification. But it does require, I think it's a week-long certification process. And then also, because I am certified in that one as well, I do like to go, and I think they require that you do go and you get training. So you're always updated on the particular, on that instrument and on the Myers-Briggs.
And can you talk a little bit then about the personal style inventory? I can actually provide some of this information for the group. It does not require certification, which is what we're talking about today, is the personal style inventory. We do provide, though, coaching. So if there are trainers out there who are interested in the personal style inventory and would like some coaching, Annette actually provides coaching to trainers so that they can quickly prepare for their class and be able to work with the material.
And I've used both of these with my clients, and what I've heard from the clients who have gone through both of them is they like the personal style inventory because it's easy to understand for the group. The people who take it up very quickly. The Myers-Briggs is an excellent instrument, very, very in-depth, and sometimes a little bit difficult for my participants to understand. So this one is really easy. They'll pick it up. And I'll tell you, I was talking to Sarah before the program today. I have clients who remember. I mean, they'll come in and they say, I remember you, and this is what we did. And they use it. They still use it every day in working with their teams. Managers use it in managing their employees. If they know what style they are, they're going to know how to speak to them. Because if I'm a manager who is a very strong T, and I'm going to be very logical and analytical and bottom line and all that, and I have a feeler who is working with me, I'm going to notch it down a little bit so I can match her or his style so I don't put them off. So it is a more welcoming environment.
Great. And from Kay, and we actually get this question. We get this question a lot, and I know, Annette, you receive this question a lot. Kay asks, how do you bridge teaching the personality types to real application on the job?
I guess it depends on, I don't know how I say it depends, but it really depends on any situation that you're in. So if you're teaching a supervisor or manager how to give feedback, I would use this in looking how to communicate to the people that they need to speak to. Also how people perceive them. As, if I have a manager who is an ENTJ, that's a very strong style, and there's going to be some flags there to say, if you have a group that is not like you, you may want to soften your style a bit so you get them, so people listen to what you have to say and they're open to it. But maybe in giving feedback, I would use it through the application. I think we talked about in teams, working in teams. Bring the team together so everybody knows who is on this team. And know what people's strengths are, and know where they are and how they're going to act, how they're going to respond, how they're going to say things. It'll help me predict people a little bit more so I can plan my response to them. So I don't react, I respond instead. You can use it, I think in the earlier part we talked about it in conflict resolution, because you're going to have that person, the extrovert in conflict is, they're totally, come on, let's deal with it, let's talk about it right now. And the introvert's like, hey, back up. I need to stop and think about this. And if I don't know who I'm dealing with, I'm going to take that a different way. I'm going to take that as, you know what? She doesn't want to talk to me. He's trying to avoid this. And the other person's thinking, boy, why are you so aggressive? And it's not that, it's just the personality. And if we are aware of this, it helps us know how to respond to that other person. I hope that helps. But I think it depends on whatever you're teaching them, how you can use this. And you can use it in many, many different ways and many different types of curriculum that you're using. And I use this instrument in all of my supervision courses that I do as a foundation for understanding others when it comes to communication, conflict resolution, giving feedback, critical thinking, and problem solving.
Great. And Stephanie has a question. Should you adjust your style when speaking to others that have a different style than your own?
Stephanie, great question. Yes. And I learned this in my own business working with some folks. And again, I told you that I am your ENTJ type person, so very direct, very bottom line, does not show a whole lot of emotion. And I had a person, in fact, it was my daughter, working with me, who is a extremely high F, and she was always taken back by me. And we did this together. We went through doing these sessions together, and I have to realize that I really have to notch it down a little bit. I have to be aware of her need for more listening and empathy and more feeling. And when I do that, I touch her, and she understands. And she even said to me one time, she says, it's the first time I know now you care. And it wasn't that I didn't care before, but it was because I presented myself in a way that she didn't perceive that I did. So it helps me understand the other person more.
Great. And we have another question here from Joe. Can I use this instrument as a selection device?
Joe, if you want to go to jail, yes. No, do not use that. No, not at all. It is not intended to be a selection tool whatsoever. It is not legal to do so, so don't do that at all.
Okay. And our last question here is from Susan. How do you use this for teens or youth groups?
Okay, good. In fact, I just agreed to do a session with I think like 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, so they're teens. And in getting to know how to work together maybe on committees, in groups, and understanding each other, and understanding their parents. And this is a nice instrument to use because it is easy to understand. So they're able to use this one and to see what style they are. And then after they find out what style they are, I like to talk to them about, what bugs you about the other person? If you have a person who, if you're an I and the other person's an E, you remember we did that activity here during the session today, to do that. So it opens that dialogue up. It also helps them understand what they're going to be, where their signature strengths are, and what they're going to be good at doing. Are you going to be good at gathering all the information and getting things and planning maybe a youth group, planning the parties, planning the activities, making sure all the details are there? Or are you going to be the big picture person to look at, hey, what kind of theme are we going to have? And, so I think it helps hone people into wins all the time. So if I know what my strengths are, I can set people up to make sure that they win and use those strengths. And the children love it. Youth groups love to do this one. And they take it back to their families as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Annette. If we did not get to answer your question, you'll receive an emailed response directly from Annette. And feel free, send in any additional questions you might have or any feedback on today's webinar. And as an exclusive offer, you will receive 20% off any personal style inventory product at our website. It's hrdqstore.com. Use the coupon code PSIWebinar at your checkout. We do appreciate your time today, and we hope you found today's webinar informative.